Hey, in this video, we're going to tackle using linear regression for time series forecasting when our data shows a seasonal pattern. So here I've got data for quarterly umbrella sales, and I've got quarters, 4 quarters, and that pattern, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, repeats, giving me many years of data. When I have it plotted, you can see that there's a regular pattern of rising and falling, indicative of seasonal patterns. We sell umbrellas when it rains. And so when we see regular seasonal pattern, but no trend in the data, right? This isn't trending upward or downward, we can use linear regressions with seasonal dummy variables as our only X variables when making a forecast. So when we've got quarterly data, we need 3 dummy variables. We need N, the number of seasons, which is 4 in this case, minus 1. And the missing quarter will become our reference group, and it's captured in the intercept of the linear regression model. So if we look at it here, the linear regression model for forecasting with dummy variables, basically we're going to forecast umbrella sales in period T is equal to an intercept plus beta 1 times D1 for the dummy variable for quarter 1, beta 2 times D2, which is a dummy variable for quarter 2, and beta 3 D3, which is a dummy variable for quarter 3. And so our task here is to use linear regression with quarterly dummy variables to forecast umbrella sales for the next year, for the next 4 quarters. So I want to forecast umbrella sales for these quarters. And that's what I'm looking for out in the future. So to get started with this, our first step, to get our graph out of the way, is to make quarterly dummy variables for the quarters. We're going to do 1, 2, and 3. Quarter 4 will be our omitted group, and that'll get captured by the intercept. So my quarterly dummy variables are going to go here in this top row, and I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 dummy variables. And to capture or to get Excel to give me a value for those dummy variables, I'm going to use the if command. So if an observation in this cell is quarter 1, we want our dummy variable for quarter 1 to be equal to 1, but then 0 because it's not quarter 2, and 0 for quarter 3 because it's not quarter 3. So what does that look like? I'm going to use the if command, equals if, and my logical test is if quarter 1, if the quarter in the row that I'm in is equal to the number of the dummy variable in the column that I'm in, I'm going to want it to return the value of 1, saying yes, this is true, and if it's not, I want it to return a 0, saying no, it's not. I need to add some absolute references to my row quarter and my column quarter. So with the row quarter, I want it to be locked in column 1, and as I drag it down, I want it to reference whatever quarter is in the row that I'm in. So I'm going to place a $sign in front of A. With regard to my column dummy variable, I want it to slide C, D, and E as I drag this formula over to the right, but I don't want it to drag down, so I want the row locked. So I'm going to place an absolute reference in front of the 1. I'll hit enter. I've got a 1 here because this is column, this observation is from quarter 1. If I drag it to the right, I can see this observation is not from quarter 2, nor is it from quarter 3. Great, that makes sense. Now let's drag this down to see how it works, and I'm going to give myself my quarterly variables for my forecasted time period 2. I'm making them red so that it's indicative that this is the future, to separate what's in the past from what is going forward. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm going to run a linear regression model with sales here as my X variable, as my Y variable, as indicated in the equation here, and then my dummy variables for quarter 1, 2, and 3 as my X variables, as indicative by this part of the expression here. So let's pop into data and then data analysis, and we'll head to linear regression. clear out what was in my regression output before. All right, now what do I have? My Y input range are all of my sales. I'm capturing the word sales also, that's my label. And my X input range is my labels for dummy variables for quarter 1, 2, and 3, and all of the dummy variables for quarter 3. I'm stopping at the end of the time that I know I'm not going to highlight into the future because I don't have a Y variable for those. And then I'm going to place my output. Let's place it. Let's see, where do I want it? I really want it. Well, let's place it for here now, but we'll move it a little bit closer in a second. All right, then I'll say OK. And there's our output. Let's do a little bit of moving. My second set of confidence intervals I'm just going to delete. So now let's take a look at our summary output from our regression model. Format everything as a number just to get rid of scientific notation and a whole lot of decimals. So the first thing I notice, this is a multiple regression model because I've got 3 X variables. My adjusted R square is 0.76, indicating that this linear regression equation explains 76% of the variation in sales over these quarters that we're looking at. And if I scroll down to my regression output, I can see that by looking at p-values that the coefficients for my 3 dummy variables, quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3, are all statistically significant with p-values of 0. So this would be statistically significant at the 10%, 5%, or 1% level. And then I can look over here at the coefficients that I'm going to use to plug in to make the forecasts, the historical forecasts and the future forecasts. And basically, my intercept, my beta 0, is 95, my beta 1 is 29, my beta 2 is 57, and my beta 3 is 26. So if I were to come in here and add these, right, my intercept is 95, my beta 1 is 29, my beta 2 is 57, and my beta 3 is 26. So to make a forecast, we're going to do the historical forecast and then the actual forecast. Zooming out again. Let's just get a little particular here so I can zoom in and you can see what I'm doing. There we go, much better. Okay, so in column F, I'm going to do a historical forecast or predicted values. And then in column G, I'm going to do a forecast. All right, so my historical forecast, or the predicted values in the past, are going to be created using this intercept and then these 3 dummy variables in accordance with that linear regression equation I showed you a minute ago. So it's going to be equal to my intercept, and put an absolute reference on that intercept. In fact, use an absolute reference anytime you reference anything from this regression box. If it comes from this table, it gets an absolute reference. If it's one of the X values shown in your row, it gets a relative reference. So predicted values for quarter 1 would be equal to the intercept plus beta 1 with an absolute reference multiplied by x1, and x1 is, in this case, 1. It's the dummy variable for quarter 1 in this row where we are in quarter 1. And that would be enough if I was only looking to do this quarter's forecast or this quarter's predicted values. Why? Because beta 2 times x2 plus beta 3 times x3, they're going to be 0 because this is not in quarter 2 or quarter 3. So the dummy variables for quarter 2 and quarter 3 are 0. But I want to drag this formula down And so I need to enter the whole equation. So I did beta 0 plus beta 1 times x1, so we're going to keep going, plus beta 2 with an absolute reference times x2, or dummy variable 2, plus beta 3 times x3. Great. Predicted value of 124, one less than the actual value of sales that we experienced in that first quarter. Now I can drag this all the way down. And so let's, although it's crowded, let's add these predicted values to this quarterly chart. So I'll click in my graph, then I'll right click and I'll choose select data. And right now I've got one series already graphed, and that's sales, and you can see it here because it's highlighted in green, and I'm going to add another series. If you're on a PC, there's an add button somewhere, but it says add. So this series is going to be predicted values, and my Y values for predicted values are here. Then I'll say OK. And now, in addition to the blue line, which shows our actual sales, I have an orange line, which shows my predicted sales. And this allows you to just eyeball how close the historical forecast in terms of predicted sales is to the actual value. And you can see that it tracks the historical values pretty well. I'm going to add to this a legend that I'm going to place at the bottom. And I'm also going to format my predicted cells with a dashed line to make it a little bit easier to distinguish, especially if someone doesn't see color. Now you can see that the predicted values have a dashed line. So the next step is to do the forecast. Well, let's forecast out for the next year, which is 4 more quarters. So it's simply the same formula again. Is our coefficient for our intercept, beta 0, plus beta 1, x1, beta 2, x2, beta 3, x3. That's our forecast, which now I can add to the chart. With my forecast, I've got to start all the way up here. See that? You have to highlight all the blanks too. And there we go. That's the forecast for the next 4 periods. Pretty handy. So let's interpret this for just a second. Notice when we're making our predicted values, and then when we make the forecast, the predicted values in the forecast, they follow the same pattern. Because the only X variables are these seasonal dummy variables, the predicted values, 124, 152, 121, 95, are going to repeat 124, 152, 121, and 95. All right, and it's going to be the same as our forecast, 124, 152, 121, 95. So the question that comes up is, why do we have to have an omitted variable? When we have 4 quarters, why don't we include a dummy variable for quarter 4? And the reason is that each coefficient explains the expected value for umbrella sales in a given quarter relative to quarter 4. So in quarter 1, we sell on average 29 umbrellas more than we would in quarter 4. So mathematically, if we are in quarter 1, we have this whole formula in here, and you can leave it in there, but it's the same thing as saying, well, 95 plus 24. I'm sorry, 95 plus 29, right? 124. Quarter 2 is on average 57 umbrella sales more than quarter 4. So we would say, okay, for quarter 2, we're going to forecast it as quarter 4 plus quarter 2. That long formula that we use works because these dummy variables are 0 in any quarter that isn't the quarter we're currently in. So if we're in quarter 1, we have a 1 for D1, but D2 and D3 are both 0. So all we're doing is taking the intercept and adding to it the coefficient for quarter 1. So when we get down here, quarter 3 is equal to 95 plus 26. Quarter 4 is just equal to 95. All right, so it becomes equal to our intercept. So the omitted value, the omitted variable, the expected sales for umbrellas in the quarter that we're omitting is captured within that intercept. Okay, I'm going to drag this formula back up so that I have it in all of my cells. I'm going to save my file. I'm going to snooze my updates, and I will see you in the next video.